Does it have a name, the cow you said?
He's a cowstronaut. That's how we think of him. Yes,
You're reaching there.
It's a space theme. That's what it is. So that was 66 days again. Are you sure? Do you have hours and minutes down yet?
Go to the website. There's a countdown. It gives me heart palpitations every time I load it.
All right. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Willy Sennott. I'm the EVP of FinOps here at Vega Cloud. We are an enterprise cloud software platform. The way we typically like to explain what we do is we're a platform that is built by FinOps practitioners for FinOps practitioners. And today I have the distinct pleasure of having JR Storment, the Executive Director of FinOps.org and also co-author of the FinOps book, joining me for a little discussion. So welcome, JR.
Hey, Willy. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Are you recovered from Google Next in Vegas yet?
I am. I'm still processing all the great things that happened down there and all the incredible people that we met. It was a tremendous event. Lots of activity, and I think a lot of what I personally saw down there, I think will feed into some of the conversation today about really the evolving landscape that is happening inside the FinOps community. I think it was kind of it was a little petri dish for seeing that happening live.
Totally. Yeah, I came back. I'm getting ready for all the keynote themes at FinOps X, and I have so many notes. And I just had a call this morning with more people talking through it all. How do you put it all together? Because there were a lot of great takeaways. It's a quickly evolving space, we'll say.
It is, and honestly, I think I've been thinking a lot about how fast the space is evolving and how ideal the timing is of the FinOps.org community, and how having that community in place and giving it a little bit of runway that it's gained over the last couple of years is ideal timing because the evolution is happening quickly.
Yeah. And, we've been talking about evolution for a long time in the FinOps Foundation community, but I think the theme that came out of this conference for me and of the year right now is actually integration, not evolution as much. And maybe integration is the evolution in the sense that, for a long time, we were all talking about FinOps as this thing that was kind of this new changing thing that you should start doing and considering doing. But the theme we're seeing right now so much, and this came out of Vegas this week, is FinOps is integrated into engineering disciplines. It's becoming integrated into finance conversations, and strategic sourcing and product decisions are integrating FinOps. And now the cool thing of the evolution of the community is that we've got all four clouds involved in things like the Focus Open Source Initiative. We've got all 48 of the Fortune 50 are doing FinOps now, and it's all becoming part of how they're doing business, which is really, really cool to see. It's the best evolution, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think you just hit the nail on the head, right? Because part of the evolution, I think, is really how, in order to be successful going forward inside of an organization in the FinOps group, is that you can no longer be siloed and sort of get by. You really have to integrate. It's where the space is going. So I think that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, that we talked a lot in the beginning of this whole thing, 5-6 years ago when FinOps as a concept was gelling around breaking down silos, which I think we're finally starting to see, because even though we still see FinOps led by one org, either under the CTO org or CFO org, depending on the organization, it's all about partnering with all the parts. And it used to be just chasing the engineers with some waste reduction things, and now it's infrastructure aware product decisions. It's about margins. It's about how do we drive the business forward and make the right data decisions and all that. And we got Willy. I'm sorry, I just noticed there's a cow on the bottom of the screen. What is the cow?
That's not just a cow. That's a cowstronaut, basically. That is that's the Vega mascot. And we have versions where he has a astronaut helmet on it too. And Vega fits nicely on the side of a cow.
We have the FinOps Fox behind us because the conference is FinOps X, and so FOX is the abbreviation. So that's great. All the animal mascots.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, they're fun.
Yeah.
So one of the things that really we've all heard about it over and over and over, right? It's everywhere. You can't escape it right now. Is the whole AI, Gen AI, and it sort of hit me in the face when I was at Google Next, and every single vendor that was on the exhibition floor, there was AI somewhere involved in the process, in the discussion, right? And I think from a evolution/integration standpoint, this is the perfect timing for the FinOps community as well too, to just get deeply embedded in that space, because it's complicated. I mean, cloud billing files we all thought were complicated in the very beginning, and they were. But I think there's been a lot of effort to make it less complicated. The focus group's a great output on that front. But having a community in place, I stop and think how valuable that would have been when I was first getting into this and building these things out a long time ago without the benefit of a community. And the community is almost like a little bit of an AI piece, right? It's a training model piece. It's new information. It's, all these places where you can go and find data and conversations from the larger community to help you solve problems that, we didn't always have access to that. So I think, again, it's just things are so aligning well behind the community and what it can do for the larger practitioner group.
Yeah, I mean, well, first I got to laugh. I was looking at the time to see how long it took you to say AI, and it was like 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So I want to talk about AI, and there's some really interesting things there to cover, which are maybe a different storyline than usual for the FinOps perspective. But to your point about the community and the AI community, I mean, I think it's important to think about, like, FinOps is not actually a technical discipline. It's a business practice that optimizes and maximizes value from a technical type of service, cloud, and now increasingly we're seeing, cloud-like things, SaaS, licensing, on-prem, hybrid, all these things that are kind of making their way into FinOps land, because people say, hey, FinOps is having great results. Cloud may be only 10 or 20 or 30% of our total spend, but we're getting more transparency and more control and more optimization options. Can we do that in other parts of the technology business? Yeah, that'd be great. But because all that's there, the real challenge underneath it, to your point of the AI as community as AI, is you've got to transform the organization, right? And so, like, I spent years in the tooling space, and tooling is a critical part of the FinOps practice, but tooling fails without the business changing to be able to ready to take it on, for engineers to think differently, and finance people to understand it, and strategic sourcing to understand, and the business to figure out the right inputs. And so that cultural bit in the community is there to really help drive that change in the organization, right? And from us, for the foundation, the critical underlying part of that is the things like the evolving FinOps framework that needs to evolve to look at how the practice is built, and how sustainability comes in, and how you manage things like Gen AIs that come in. And we're seeing that community sort of feed into those framework, and the framework 2024 launched with a bunch of new capabilities, personas, and roles to help flesh that out, so that when you get the business ready and you do get your tooling in place, that can be successful. And all of that is to enable data-driven decision making that is better for the business, which then feeds back into more business changes over time. So I like that you're focusing on the community aspect, because that's, I think, the thing that you need to make it successful ultimately.
Yeah, and as an enterprise platform, and continually trying to evolve and build out the capabilities inside of the tooling and the platform, right? It's trying to encompass all of these things that you're talking about, and being nimble and agile enough to add new data sets in, add new frameworks in, to be able to support the community as it's evolving. Because I think about this just like you've been doing this a very long time in the space before really FinOps was kind of a thing, right? It was a different animal back then, right? The goal was cost optimization, and there was so much focus on the rate side of the equation, and then your bills, rate times usage, so you get the usage piece, but it was really sort of usage light, I would say. And I think one of the most intriguing things that I've seen over the last 5 to 8 years in this space is really how enterprises that have been in the cloud for a while now are getting to a much different spot in the conversation. So FinOps teams that were built maybe a certain way in the past, that were successful and very successful in doing what, maybe the original charter was, the key members of the team need to be a little bit different now as they move up the cloud maturity scale. As you get out of the IaaS bucket and you get into microservices, and you get into containers, and you get into all these different things, right? Which is where I love the concept of what you were talking about with integration, is instead of just, trying to go find FinOps individuals that have a deep technical background, to your point, if you just integrate with the technical teams, you get a lot of that you need along the way. Because otherwise if you're filling your FinOps team, you're out there looking for unicorns that you can't find, that have a deep technical background, but oh, by the way, know every aspect of a financial statement.
Well, and I think unicorns is actually, it's funny. I was having a conversation about unicorns this morning. I was working on some slide work, and unicorns came up in some of these. I was interviewing some of our governing board and some of the people who are far along in this. And the concept came up through the idea of someone who can speak with credibility across multiple groups. Specifically, can they talk to procurement as well as engineering? Can they talk to an architect as well as a business person? And the FinOps role very much is, I think, training them on the language of how to do that and the motivations and understanding between those groups so that they can go and kind of be internal consultants, or you might even say mediators between different needs that people need in order to get those business outcomes, right? And that's, I think that's pretty, it's hard, right? How do you get enough of those people? But then we do see sort of the need for that. Their job is an enablement. These unicorns is an enablement function, right? It's like they should be getting the engineering people better at it and the finance people better and procurement people better at it. But initially they're filling that gap that exists and helping do the trade-offs between all these teams. And I mean, ultimately kind of, I guess it's evangelizing and selling the concepts, but then providing the right data and structure and reporting and rate management in a lot of cases that's needed so that they can, get that acceleration going.
Yeah. As in the past, having built many FinOps teams along my career path, it's the goal now is just, you have to evolve and as you break into a little bit of that challenge that's always been there somewhere near the top of the major challenges, right, is getting engineers to take action, enable them, all of those different things, being able to talk their language with enough underlying sort of knowledge of the technical landscape will allow you to do that. Because, I found, when you're talking to those teams, the minute they determine you really don't know what you're talking about from a technical landscape, they're going to shut you off a little bit, right? And it's learning and developing teams along the way to be able to get by that. Because once you can get by that and get the buy-in, I found getting the action to be done is much easier. You just got to get by that initial gate a little bit along the way.
Well, part of the action equation, right, as well as is getting management to prioritize those actions. It's not just putting it on the engineers. We talked about this a lot when we were first coming out with this, or we were coming out with the second edition of the Cloud FinOps book, which is in the early 2019 days. So much of it was like getting those engineers to do the stuff, and it's like, no, you got to get product to prioritize and management to get there and all those areas. So it's a balance for sure.
Yeah, 100% agree. If there is a lack of charter, is the way that I like to think about it from the FinOps team inside the C-suite. Your hands are tied. You can be really good at what you do, but if you don't have that sort of vision and direction and charter from the higher levels in the organization, it's a really hard climb.
Yeah. So I'm curious if I can pick your brain on something.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out, when is the right time for someone to, speaking on tooling, when is the right time for somebody to use native? When's the right time for somebody to buy a platform? When's the right time for somebody to buy a platform? When's the right time to mix and match? Taking off, because I know you're on the platform side, taking off your Vega hat and thinking as an industry guy, how would you lay that out to somebody who maybe wasn't your customer you're counseling?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Honestly, this conversation comes up all the time because even as a FinOps platform, you want to make sure it's the right choice for potential customers along the way and what's a good fit. So if I were to think about somebody who might be a really good candidate for just using native tooling along the way, somebody who is probably single threaded into a cloud, not dealing with all 3 or 4 clouds, because that's one of the things the native tooling is usually going to struggle with, right? They can't be multi-cloud, at least not yet. Not sure how they'll cross that bridge if and when. But somebody who's single threaded into a cloud, maybe doesn't have the largest footprint in spend. So think more SMB, that sort of layer. I think those are good candidates. Just starting your journey into the cloud, great space to use, get familiar. And then when the complexity in whatever it is you're doing requires you to go beyond just say that single cloud, or you want to roll some other things in, that's a really good sort of light switch to go, maybe I should start looking for a platform. The one that I honestly still personally struggle with finding a super good use case for, they're out there, is trying to build your own, right? Especially if you are not a software company, trying to build software maybe isn't ideal. You've seen entities do this across a wide spectrum of areas where they get into an area that isn't core to their business. I've seen life insurance companies buy travel companies for whatever random reason, right? It doesn't work out well. I think when you get beyond that, that's sort of my general take on it. I think no matter the most important thing is to just start doing something, right? And wherever you start, and also keeping your ears open. And if it becomes really hard and you're finding it to be complex, reach out, find a partner, talk to somebody, do some research, right? And then let that sort of inform where you go. I think this is such a broad space, right? And there's so many people involved in the community. There is a use case for largely any of those things.
I mean, what you're saying just to me just screens out, particularly that aspect of, do something, which is you got to focus on progress over perfection. And there's whatever thing you use, native, platform, otherwise, you're not going to do it so badly that you don't get some value and that you're getting started. You're getting started. And when we talk about the FinOps lifecycle, inform, optimize, operate, the whole thing that's really important is like you want to go. You don't want to like I'm gonna crush inform so deep that I cover it before I get to optimize. I'm gonna do that before I get to operate. It's like it's meant to be an iterative, quick loop where it's like get a little visibility, even if it's bad, and then go look at optimizing and go look at operating and loop back around and like just start. And it's okay. You don't have to boil the ocean in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the old adage: how do you eat an elephant? Right, one bite at a time. Right. I mean, that really don't be overwhelmed by the sort of the immensity of how you see the problem or the challenge. Right, just get started. Just take a bite. Maybe get some sauce.
Barbecue sauce, elephant sauce. So the AI thing. What's your take there in relation to FinOps?
Yeah, I think as AI is, not just a single concept, right? It's multi-threaded across the board, right? So if you just think about from the standard sort of most basic kind of FinOps practitioner lens inside of AI, I think one of the challenges going to be is really, and not just for FinOps practitioners, but for businesses as a whole, is understanding what the cost drivers are. In the typical space, you spin up a VM, whatever it is, you run it for an hour. That's what you're going to get charged. Really easy to conceptually understand. You have an S3 bucket, you've got storage somewhere. It's a gigabyte. That's what you're going to pay for. I think all the exciting things that are happening with AI also come with these really could be complex pricing models that you may or may not be able to predict really well on the way in, especially if, let's say, you're doing something like digitizing an archival tape, right? And you want to enable some of the really cool tools that are out there with tagging of faces or places or all those different things, right? What you don't know is what's on the tape, right? So you may have a rough idea, but until the process runs, you don't really know what you're going to pay for it until it's done. And then even once you know that, so after a while, right, you'll start to be able to use generative AI to create some synthetic data and better predict those sort of things. However, then you still have to figure out the business value of making those choices, right? So I think that's the other exciting part for me in the FinOps community is this integration where you're going to start to get to the real value. If you think about the unit economics, right, and getting the revenue drivers that go with it, because it's always sort of been focused on one half of the equation. I started my career as a financial auditor, and it's always been, strange for me that there's all this focus, but I'm missing the other part of the income statement that would be super handy to have as you're making decisions, right?
Well, I said that I was talking to an analyst at Google Next, actually, who threw out this thing about, there's all about cost savings. And I'm like, the interesting thing is that has come up recently is that FinOps is increasingly not becoming about cost. Cost is, as you said, one side of that's an input to it. You could say it's about reducing waste. Yeah, okay, that's closer, but it is about the output. It's about the business value. I mean, people still talk about unit economics and that stuff. All that's still a driver to, I want to get ahead and I want to use technology to get value out of it. And, cost is a measure, carbon's a measure, time to the product is a measure, and customer value is a measure, right? And you've got to look at all those, which is why it's got to become integrated, so you can have all those integrated conversations that are trade-offs.
Yeah, and I'm going to use this AI example. So if I remember, or when Lambda first came out as a service, right? Super exciting service, great technology. Everybody was excited about it. Let's go use this. It was great for a while on that front because everybody was honestly operating inside of the free tier. It's like Lambda's great. And then as they started to use it more, all of a sudden the bills just go through the roof. What's happening here, right? In using as an example on the AI side of sort of what the cost drivers are, then it took time to sort of go learn and what the causational items were in the settings that were driving those costs to go up that people weren't really thinking about early on because everybody was in the free tier, right? So it seemed to be working great. It wasn't until you break out of that sort of the how you set it up to be cost effective was exposed in the equation. And this is where I think, not to just keep going back to a theme, and have a total love fest with FinOps.org. But this is where I think the community is going to be incredibly helpful because, again, during that time when Lambda was there and people were struggling and trying to learn, there was no community with practitioners and users where you could just pop on and see all these people that were trying to overcome a similar type of challenge and learn from them.
That's totally it, man. Because I history, I've been in this a long time. I've been talking about cloud costs since like 2011. And after about 6-7 years of that, I just started hearing all those same themes over and over, people struggling, and everybody thought that they were doing it on their own, and nobody really. And that's when it was like, oh my God, these people need to come together and the theme that comes up now so much. I mean, I was sitting at Google Next with a member of the intelligence community, we'll say broadly, and this person says, at this event, he says, the first time I've heard of FinOps, he's like, I've been doing this for the last 6 years.
And didn't know you were doing FinOps.
And I had no idea that I was doing FinOps. And he was like, I'm here with you. This is amazing. And they spent like 2 hours at our event hanging out, talking. And it was like, there you go. I mean, you may be in this weird like corner of government that you think what you're doing is totally unique, but actually the only difference is for you in government is like your procurement models are different, but you're doing the same things as the public companies and everybody around the world. So
congratulations, you found your tribe. Yeah. Right. 100%. Well, anything else you want to cover off from a topic standpoint? We've got some more time.
Well, let me spin this around. Y'all are, I know you're coming to San Diego. I'm calling for San Diego in 66 days for the FinOps X conference. I think you're speaking there. What are you speaking about?
Yeah, it's really about how inside of an organization, teams can leverage platform and the tooling to make those successes, especially inside of an organization where there's a central FinOps team working with a variety of different business units. In large enterprises, one of the things that you see a bit is those enterprises that have been built through acquisition is a much different entity than enterprises that have been built organically, so to speak, right? The challenges that are there are, I think, some of the most complex challenges and difficult challenges for any FinOps team is to be able to navigate the different landscapes. Honestly, sometimes they have different cultures. They're using different clouds. They've got different governance. They've got different tagging. They're in vastly different places in the cloud maturity scale. You could be dealing with one group or business unit that is, maybe they're saddled or handcuffed with all the legacy architecture, right? Those poor guys. Right. And then you've got teams that were built in the cloud and born in the cloud, right? So it's a different level of conversation for them, and it's a challenge and trying to figure out how to navigate through those and leveraging platforms for the teams to be able to drive savings throughout the org, report back on those savings throughout the org, and create momentum. And then, to your point, it starts to go much beyond savings, right? Then you're getting into the real sort of sexy part of the conversation, right? Around, hey, this is what FinOps is supposed to be. Sometimes cost savings get you in the door when you're inside of an organization, you're trying to work with new teams, but that's not your ultimate goal, right? Your ultimate goal is really maximizing the business value from any set of investments.
Yeah, it's a really weird fine line to walk with the savings thing, because I don't want to knock savings. Like, everybody loves savings. And I do think it's helpful. And rightful for a lot of new practices who are building business cases to do it, or if you're doing tool selection, you're building a business case, whatever you're doing for a business case, you got to look at savings. Like if I do this thing, or buy this tool or build this practice, am I going to have savings? But then I think the critical thing, well, two bits. One is, what are you going to do with the savings? The best story we heard last year at the FinOps X conference was the Adobe senior director of engineering, who was like, yeah, we used the FinOps practice to look at, we wanted to ship a new product we didn't have funding for. We took, some millions out of our cloud spend, and then we redirected that engineering resources and they literally built Adobe Firefly, which was their first AI product, and they shipped it. And you look at their stock price after they shipped Adobe Firefly, their stock started to go crazy. They ended up spending much more in cloud than they were before, but they were getting all this new value out because they had redirected it. So that like business value side. But the other thing I would say, just critical for building the key business case for the practice is, yeah, you may want to carry savings in there initially, but you got to set the expectation that over time, you're not trying to get your cloud bill to go down again, right? And that you don't want to marry the to it too much, that it's going to be growing, but I want to drive effective outcomes, with that spend. And I think, yeah, it's super critical to get there.
Yeah. And, the other thing I think about is, to your point, when you go in and you save money, you can create budget for other things that you don't necessarily have budget for. And honestly, that's the super cool part. But, if you think about where a lot of entities have been in the last 18 to 24 months, right? And there's all this external pressure, all this focus on costs and reducing costs in your organization, because people are trying to sort of right size their organization. And when I look at it that way, I also put my human hat on a little bit and go, if we can be more effective with our spend, maybe I don't have to let go of individuals who are really talented. But look, if you've been in business a long time, you understand you go through these cycles, and the first place often that is targeted for cost savings is people. Along the way. And if you can, and people are hard to replace, and there's a long-term cost to doing that I think often gets missed. Talent is, sparse, and training is expensive, all of those things. So if you can just make a simple change, don't change anything else. You're just going to be more effective with what you've got, and you can save people inside of your organization, and talent, and people will help drive future revenue and success of your business. So it's just, hey, let's look at this and do a couple of these quick little things, and let's save a friend, along the way, if you want to think about it.
Probably another day on the next hill, on the next battle. Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And I mean, that's training can be expensive. And that's, one of the things that we also, at the same time, we find that the critical thing with FinOps is unlocking a common language between different people. And a big part of it, and then the focus in our community is obviously training, and there's like deeper training out there. But it's one of the things we just rolled out was like a free, broad, open training for everybody to like just get to know the basics, because you probably don't going to have your executive necessarily go deep on a FinOps certification or something, but everybody's got to be aligned around common set of language and terminology. And it's the same thing with the focus initiative, right? We're trying to get out there, which is, all 4 clouds are now working on this, where let's align the language between the clouds. But also, the really hard thing about the space in my mind is the data, and getting people to understand the data. And I remember having conversations a couple of years ago where somebody's trying to align, AWS's unblended costs to, some version of a Google amortized cost to some version of a Microsoft cost metric. And none of them are incorrect, but they all use different terminology, right? So how do you get that aligned? So you no longer have to start arguing or have to keep arguing about not what is my cloud bill, but like, is that even the right metric? Is that with my rates or without my rates? Is it amortized, not amortized, and all these things? And so much of this groundwork is getting those basics in place, which is why we're trying to get people trained up and enabled and get the data cleaned up, right? So you can come in and do those hard culture changes. When you deliver, when you build, buy, or use native on your tooling, you can have success, and in the end, result in business outcomes. So yeah, it's a long process, but everybody's supporting everybody else to get there happily now.
Yeah, it's absolutely a data game. My sort of one of my go-to taglines has always been data is our oxygen, right? It really is, right? In the space, you need it, and you have to be able to understand it, right? And it helps you to thrive. And the fun part, if you like data, if you're a data geek, like maybe I am, is that there's always new data sets out there to help you enhance and layer in and improve sort of what you're looking at, right? And that's
Yep.
super exciting. But you have to have the foundational elements along the way that allows you to build upon it. So I'm going to go back to my finance background a little bit. It's even in accounting, right? It's hard to do the higher level accounting stuff if you don't have debits and credits figured out, right? So you start there, you just get the basics, and then you just continue to build upon that.
Yeah. Amen. I think you said it right. Well, Willy, thank you so much for having me on this.
You bet. As always, it's fantastic to engage with you. And I look forward to seeing you again in San Diego, if not sooner.
Yeah, definitely. We got San Diego. Hopefully, it's maybe at Microsoft Ignite and all the upcoming things, AWS events, all those spots. So we'll hopefully connect soon, and hopefully we can get together some of the community when we do it. Thanks for bringing the Vega Cloud. Does it have a name? The cow you said?
He's a Cowstronaut.
Cowstronaut.
That's how we think of him. Yes,
You're reaching there.
It's a space theme. That's what it is. So that was 66 days again. Are you sure? Do you have hours and minutes down yet?
Go to the website. There's a countdown. It gives me heart palpitations every time I load it. I'm like, oh gosh. On that topic, I need to get back working on keynotes. So thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Vega Cloud. We are a enterprise FinOps platform built by practitioners for practitioners, especially in the enterprise space. We're really excited about this discipline. And if you want to learn some more, don't hesitate to hit the like and share button, and follow us if you want to find out some more.